What's going on, my broskies? My name is Toadskii, back again here to bring you guys yet another One Piece Treasure Cruise video, and we are going to be talking about more accessible teams in order to take on Treasure Map versus Who's Who. Once again, because it is a release of a Sugofest exclusive on a Treasure Map Sugofest, it definitely feels like this is it's going to be difficult if you don't have Jinbei, you know, the new legend Jinbei as one of the captains for the main boss fights, of course. We'll talk more about it as we go along. Before we get into that though, let's actually talk about what Who's Who actually does. Like, is he actually worth all the effort? Let's see. He's int powerhouse driven, surprise surprise, 3.75 attack to powerhouse, 1.2 HP, reduces his own special charge time by 5 turns at the start of battle 2. That is interesting. He also reduces his own special charge time by 3 turns at the start of the quest. So they're really trying to supercharge his special, I guess, if you're using him as a captain in a free-to-play sense, but if you already have Sugofest exclusives, you're not going to be using him as a captain. The special ability, which will do a 15% health cut, and then it reduces matching or unfavorable slot effects placed on the crew by 5 turns. This is really interesting. There's not a lot of characters in the game that can remove this debuff or buff, so any beneficial or non-beneficial or buffs on your crew, he can remove 5 turns of it, which is cool. However, sometimes when it gets inflicted to your crew, it's like for 99 turns and it doesn't even matter. But there are some times where it is only, 3 to 5 turns. This special can remove it, which is really good. He also changes block slots to matching. If you have a strength, dex, or quick captain, then you reduce cooldown of powerhouse characters by 1 and boost their attack by 2.25 and lock your slots for 1 turn. So that's actually a pretty good effect. However, if you have a Psi or Int captain, he reduces powerhouse by 2 turns, and then you get a minus 15% resistance to powerhouse for 1 turn. That's interesting. Honestly, it would have been better if just all of the effects were always able to activate, like so long as your captain was powerhouse, let's say. I think that would have been a lot better, but he is an Int character, so I don't really understand what this is going to be used for. He does resist special reverse by 2 turns. That is good at least. So I guess it just depends on what kind of content, what kind of things you want to be doing. Do you want to lock those slots? Do you want the attack boost? Or do you want more turns of cooldown? And do you want the resistance down because you may already have an attack buff on the crew? It is dependent on what kind of team comp you're going for. But he seems okay. I definitely can see some situations where he's going to be useful. Of course, we already talked about it, minus 2 cooldown with his crewmate ability, which is good. Tapping on this character with an int slot will further increase the crew's attack boost by 0.2. That's interesting as well for a free-to-play character to have that. Slot bind resistance by 5, enrage 150, and minus 3 to increase damage taken. He unfortunately does not have any support effect that's useful, which is a bit of a shame. Powerhouse speed 5, attack 5, 35 CT, 2 enemies with high attack, or high HP should we say, for level 5 attack down, and targets 2 targets for 1300 fixed damage. Yeah, this character's terrible in Rumble. You're never using him in Rumble. His abilities seem interesting, but definitely not one of the best treasure map characters that we've seen. So without further ado, let's go ahead and actually jump into each of these mini bosses with these accessible teams. So here we have the first boss against Drake. So Drake on Battle 1 gives cooldown to all units, so there's a very, very typical Battle 1 fight. On the Battle 3, we get a 70% health cut to the crew, 3 turns of damage threshold, as well as 8 turns of bind to the crewmates only. And this is where Legend Chopper is really good because his special will remove the bind on your crewmates, and then Ulti can remove the damage threshold. And then the rest of the characters are just characters that will give you boosts because X-Drake is an int type boss. So nothing really too complex here. I mean, ultimately, you don't really need a captain that can just get rid of bind for the crewmates. Alternatively, you could just have support effects that get rid of all the bind. That is probably something that a lot of people are going to opt to do. I haven't actually built my own teams for this yet. I'll be doing pulls on part 3 of the Sugofest. So after I do my pulls, I'll be able to try and build my teams. But this is really interesting. And remember, this is only the first boss, so he should be the easiest in terms of HP thresholds, but ultimately doesn't seem too difficult. Moving on now to the second fight, which is going to be versus Page 1. He is a quick boss, so you ideally want to be bringing Dex characters, but also characters that are Slasher, Free Spirit, or Fighters will all receive the minus 5 cooldown. Now in Battle 3, we get a full board of unfavorable slots, and they are also counted as non-beneficial. I believe it's for 5 turns, and also get hit with 5 turns of attack down, and 2 hits of hunger. Now this is where the Kizuna Brook is going to be very, very good, because he does have that hunger removal, which is great. He does have a special that can get rid of your attack down, and he changes his own slot into tandem and changes adjacent into recovery. So as long as you can treat those as beneficial, that's probably going to be the way to go for a lot of teams. So you want to be having this Brook for the hunger, the slot change, the attack down. He just helps out a lot. Alternatively, you can build a little bit of a weird team, I guess, because of the new treasure map Who's Who actually can remove the unfavorable slot thingamajiggy if you want to be running, you know, Who's Who for some reason. Even though he doesn't receive the cooldown, you know, by the time you reach the boss fight, he'll likely have his special cooldown ready anyways. But this team here is pretty straightforward. I mean, Brook just deals with everything here. So you're trying to, you know, put Brook on that pedestal and kind of build around him. So you can honestly build with whatever you want, but so long as it synergizes with Brook and ideally running Dex characters, it's going to be the best way to move forward. Obviously, in this team example, we're using Koala as the captain. I mean, don't have to do that at all. You have also the Carrot and Wanda here. Don't need that at all. You just need characters that can, you know, be boosted with Brook, that give you the best damage potential to win the fight. Moving on now to the third battle is versus Ulti, and this time Driven Slasher and Powerhouse received the cooldown. And remember that Ulti is also a quick boss, so you want to be building ideally a Dex team for this fight. Now, once again, all colored slots are treated as badly matching to the crew, so ideally using Tandem Recovery, Semler, other types of slots. Also, 7 turns of Threshold, 6 turns of increased defense. You have a 3-turn barrier of 3 million additional health and 6 turns of resilience. So there's a lot to unpack here, but with the release of the super evolution of Kid, he is going to be your best way to clear this fight, as the super bomb slots that he's able to apply to the crew are going to be ideal. Remember, you do need a supernova on the crew in order to trigger his super typing in the first place, but that gives you the full board of super bomb slots. His special ability will do enough damage to just destroy the barrier, which is great, and also Kid's special removes 7 turns of the threshold. Now you gotta get around the defense up. So in this team, we're using the Okiku, but again, any unit that either removes 6 turns of defense or does defense reduction is able to be used because the enemy does not have defense down immunity. So there's actually a lot of options that are available to you. Remember that Kid also boosts Dex and Driven characters, so you got a pretty wide array of characters to use. And there's also the resilience you have to deal with. So in this team example, we're using the Quick Kaido from last month's free-to-play event, because his special says that if you have a Driven character as your captain, then he does end of turn damage. So that's the way that we're getting around that. But Kid basically hard carries this, and if you actually were lucky enough to pull the treasure map Rare Recruit Killer from last month's treasure map, he's also going to be useful with Kid to remove the defense up, and I believe he also removes the resilience as well. So Kid and Killer both together just totally combat this boss altogether. So now we move on to the final Battle Rush boss versus Sasaki. This one's pretty tricky, but we have Dex, Psy, and Int that receive cooldown, and the recommended squad for this fight is actually just the Big Mom batch, surprisingly enough. But looking forward to Battle 3, we have 5 turns of attack down, we have a full board of block slots, 5 turns of special bind, 1 turn of special reverse, normal attacks only, and 10% damage at the end of every turn, so end of turn damage on the opponent's side of the field. And if you launch a color affinity boost, your crewmates will be binded for 5 turns and removes your beneficial effects. So don't use a color affinity boost, which is why we have the support of Nami on the crew. So the supports on this team are also kind of interesting because we do have the Jozu attached to Ace. That removes 2 turns of attack down when we're inflicted with it. And then the Shiryu will also remove attack down because he only removes 4 turns of attack down. So we need 1 more extra. That's why Jozu's on the crew as a support. But also Shiryu launches a color affinity special when you use his special. So that's why we have the support of Nami to get her affinity, because that will not trigger the enemy's interrupt. In terms of the other characters on this team, we need another character that gets rid of block slots. In this team example, we have Bon Clay. Literally anything will work. You could literally use a Luffy character with Brûlé support if you wanted to. You just need something to get around those block slots. But luckily, with Halloween Ace as a captain, he gets around the special bind and the special reverse with his ability, so that's fantastic. Ace is also your attack booster for the crew as well, so it works pretty effectively, honestly. Halloween Ace hard carries, especially because the boss is a Psy boss, so building an int team focused around Halloween Ace is going to be probably one of the most ideal ways to get through this fight if you didn't pull all of the characters from Big Mom's batch. And then we've got the final boss versus Black Maria. A little bit of a forewarning for this team. It is ideally using the friend captain Jinbei for this team. If you're not using the friend captain Jinbei, this team is not going to work as intended. But Fighter, Powerhouse, and Slasher receive cooldown. Remember that if you are using the Jinbei as a friend, Jinbei's captain boosts Psy, Fighter, and Powerhouse characters. So building a team with that in mind, those are the characters you want to use. So Battle 2, there's block slots, Despair, 3 turns of threshold, and 5 turns of attack down. So the Sasaki on this team is very interesting. With double special launch, you can get rid of that attack down, which is fantastic. Remember, on initial activation, it's going to also give you a color affinity boost, but it also removes 2 turns of despair and attack down. And then on the second launch, which means you've launched it 1 time, it will remove an additional 1 turn of despair and attack down. So Sasaki by himself removes all attack down and all the despair. So you do have to still get around the damage threshold and also the block slots, and that's why Big Mom is on the team. So Big Mom, it says if you have a Driven or Powerhouse Captain, then it changes the crew's block slots into matching. You also get a chain lock, and it removes the threshold. So the Big Mom and the Sasaki specials are going to deal with all of the gimmicks on this fight. Then it does mention that on Battle 2, the boss fully revives, but do note that that doesn't mean you have to kill the boss again. Typically, this means that the boss will revive and then move on to stage 3. So likely the mini boss on stage 2 is probably Black Maria again. But either way, looking forward into Battle 3, there's going to be special bind inflicted to the crew. There's going to be unfavorable slots, 10 turns of Rainbow Shield, 5 turns of increased defense, and once again, hit with 5 more turns of attack down. So just thinking with the friend Captain Jinbei, his superclass special will actually change all type slots into matching, so you don't have to worry about that. But also, the Treasure Map Jinbei on this team, he actually gets around Special Bind for the crew, and he also provides you with a color affinity boost, pretty fantastic. The Rainbow Shield is dealt with Jinbei Special. The increased defense is removed from this Zoro, and also having Zoro on the team allows you to activate the superclass special of Jinbei in the first place as a friend captain. But this Zoro is a free-to-play unit, I believe is actually available on the Recollection Archive if you don't have him. But his special will set all enemies' defense to 0, which is the important component here, so you can get around the defense up. And then the attack down that's also inflicted to the crew, we can use the rare recruit Jack on this team, who will get rid of the 5 turns of attack down and also give you an orb boost. So on this team, we're going to have essentially everything that we could possibly want in order to get through this fight. It should be pretty straightforward. Orb boost affinity, we'll have the chain boundary from Jinbei special, of course. If you have some type of way to get a chain lock through another mean, you could also use Jinbei special after the fact to get the attack boost instead. But either way, this should be a pretty comfortable team in order to get through the fight, so long as you're able to secure the friend captain Jinbei. And then we get to the most difficult of the fights, which is the Who's Who Intrusion battle. So there is a lot to cover here. So of course, Strength, Psi, and Int receive cooldown. Once again, this team is in the mindset of having Jinbei as the friend captain. Battle 2, unfavorable slots. Special reverse to your right hand side, and there's also going to be, I believe it's 5 turns of paralysis to the middle left and the bottom left. So in this team composition, the Frankie and the Garp are inflicted with paralysis, and then the Bon Clay, the Chopper, and the Barter are all inflicted with 3 turns of special reverse. With this in mind, we are ideally going to be using, there's also 5 turns of Rainbow Shield on that fight as well. So the Frankie special reduces the captain's cooldowns by 2, and then we have the Garp special, which can also reduce the crew's cooldowns. And we're going to have the Garp special, we're going to have the Frankie special, we're going to use the Bon Clay special ideally as well. We do have the Mr. 1 support on it to remove some of the paralysis, but realistically, I don't think it's overly needed, but it's kind of nice to give you a chain boost nonetheless. And then we don't really need to change the color of Bon Clay anyway, because he's already a Psi unit, he's already a fighter unit, so he actually works out perfectly anyway. So with this team comp, we're ideally using Frankie, Garp, and Bon Clay on Battle 2 to kill that boss. He does revive, but then he runs away, or at least he should be running away. Battle 3, there's a lot to talk about once again. Full board of unfavorable slots. You get your health cut by 50%. There's going to be normal attacks only. There is a chain multiplier growth rate reduction. There is attack down if your chain is 2.8 or less. There is 6 turns of Rainbow Shield, 3 turns of Threshold, and Delay Immunity. And you're not allowed to activate a special that manipulates your slots, because if you do, you get badly matching slots again, you get bind to your bottom right character, and there's once again 3 more turns of damage threshold. Just lots of nasty stuff. And if you defeat the boss, there's 50k fixed damage. So when we reach the final boss stage, one of the really cool things here is what we can do is, by using Bon Clay special in the previous stage, we're going to have his super type ready. His super type gives us a 3.25 chain lock, which means we don't have to worry about the chain down, we don't have to worry about the chained attack down. And also, it means that by using the super type special of Bon Clay, we get a chain lock. Then, when we use the special of Jinbei, because we already have a chain lock, he's going to provide an attack boost instead. So that works very, very good. Then the super type special, the super class special of Jinbei, will remove the threshold, change the badly matching slot into matching, which is great, and Jinbei's special will remove the rainbow shield completely. Now, there is the 50,000 fixed damage. I'm not too sure how much HP this team will actually have. If you're able to tank that, then yeah, you can just straight up not use Barto, but if your HP ends up being below that 50,000 threshold, then having Barto to tank the hit is really good. But I think this team will likely have more than 50,000 HP to tank, so you could probably replace Barto with like an orb booster, for example, or a color affinity booster, just depending on what you want to do. So this team actually does get through it pretty comfortably. The only real slot that I think a lot of people might struggle, at least to build this team with, is the rare recruit Frankie, and he is really, really nice because he gets around the cooldown for the captains, and he also removes the rainbow shield. There were a couple of other things I was contemplating. So instead of using the Mr. 1 support on Bon Clay, you could use the waifus, which reduces his cooldown by 1 on battle 2, and then Garp and the waifu support will remove all of the cooldown reverse on Bon Clay, which means that you could replace the Frankie with Fujitora because he gets around the rainbow shield, and that could actually work in your favor. So that is an option, just depending on what you want to do in terms of the team build. And of course, Chopper's on this team as well because he gets around the paralysis that gets inflicted on battle 2. He does have the special reverse, of course, but Garp reduces cooldowns by 2. When you reach the final stage, then Chopper and Barto are going to be ready. So that's why this team is built and placed in the certain order that it is. So again, Chopper isn't really required. You could have Chopper replaced with another unit that gets around paralysis and maybe give you a buff of some kind. It just really depends on what you want to do, but ensure that any type of special that you use, make sure on battle 3 you don't use an orb changing special because bad things happen. So with all that being said, those are my quote-unquote accessible teams to take on the Who's Who treasure map. So that is going to wrap it up for me. Thank you so much for watching the video. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed it. And if you guys did enjoy the video, make sure to go ahead and leave a like. And if you want to stay up to date with all of the content that I post, including more One Piece Treasure Cruise content, make sure to hit the subscribe button down below. But on that, guys, I'll see you guys within the next video.